It is unclear which festival it is that brings Jesus to Jerusalem this time. He had been there earlier in the narrative of John for the Passover, John chapter 2, verse 23. When he was in Jerusalem during the Passover festival, in the festival crowd, many believed in his name because they saw the signs that he was doing. This Sabbath healing in this story will remain a matter of controversy when later on Jesus returns again to Jerusalem for the Feast of Sukkoth. John chapter 7, verse 23, a little bit further on in the narrative, Jesus said, if on the Sabbath, see, they're kvetching at him about that, okay? They want to destroy him about that. So Jesus says, if on the Sabbath a man receives circumcision so that the law of Moses may not be broken, are you angry with me because on the Sabbath I made a whole person well? John chapter 5, verses 1 to 20, actually just a little bit, verses 1 through 3, I think. After this, there was a feast of the Judeans, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now at the sheep pool in Jerusalem, there is a place with 5 colonnades. Its name, called in the language of the Judeans, is Bethesda, or Bethzatha. I left it there. In the colonnades lay many ill, blind, lame, and crippled. Sick persons lying beside the pool would have been there not only to seek healing, but also to beg. Such beggars were among the socially expendables, the unclean throwaway people who frequented every pre-industrial city. In this same category were prostitutes, the poorest day laborers, tanners forced to live outside the cities because they smelled, peddlers, bandits, sailors, hustlers, for example, gamblers and usurers, ass drivers, dung collectors, and even some merchants. Such persons were usually forced out of the cities at night when gates were locked, but frequented the cities during the daytime to beg or find work. These people without social standing, we would call them the poorest people, lived just outside the city's walls or along the hedgerows of adjacent fields. While these people were not a large portion of the total population, perhaps only as much as 10%, their living conditions were appalling to our standards. Now there's something interesting I want to show you. If you're reading this in an older Bible, older Catholic Bible or older Protestant Bible, you'll notice that it goes verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and verse 4. But if you have your New Revised Standard Version or your New American Bible Revised Edition, and you're reading the story, you'll see it goes chapter 5, verse 1, verse 2, verse 3, and then next to verse 4, there's nothing. There's a little asterisk. And it skips verse 4 and goes right to verse 5. You follow that asterisk down in your NRSV or your new NABRE, and you'll get a footnote explaining why that is. What I'm trying to tell you is if you read this story in an older Bible, like say the King James Version, okay, or the New Jerusalem Bible, it will have verse 4. And this is what it says. John chapter 5, verse 4. For from time to time, an angel of the Lord used to come down into the pool, and the water was stirred up. So the first one to get in after the stirring of the water was healed of whatever disease afflicted him. Probably, again, that's a mistranslation, right? It shouldn't be disease. It should be something else. It should be illness. For from time to time, an angel of the Lord used to come down into the pool. This verse, verse 4, which is now missing in our modern translations, in our best modern translations, provided an explanation for the healing power that came with the stirring of the waters. It almost certainly is a later addition and was not part of the original text of John. The New American Bible Revised Edition and the New Revised Standard Version therefore have put it into a footnote. The NABRE explains it this way. This is in our red Bibles that you'll see, the New American Bible Revised Edition. Toward the end of the 2nd century in the West, and among the 4th century Greek fathers, this additional verse, John chapter 5, verse 4, was known. The angel was a popular explanation of the turbulence and the healing powers attributed to it. This verse is missing from all early Greek manuscripts and the earliest versions, including the original Vulgate. The translation of St. Jerome into the Latin vulgar language, he didn't include it. Why do you think he didn't do that, folks? Do you understand there were many manuscripts and copies of these texts that were produced? And there are variant, corrupted texts. But our best manuscripts don't have this verse. Further, when scholars analyze this verse, in the versions we do have, the vocabulary is un-Johannine. It doesn't sound like John's language. Very similar to the story of the woman caught in the act of adultery. But that story is too good to get rid of, right? But this little foot comment in verse 4, with its markedly un-Johannine, non-Johannine language, had to go. So that's why it's become a footnote. Why am I bringing this up to you? I want you to see that our translations of our Bible change. Our Vatican-approved translations of the Bible change. Now, who do you think brought to the attention of the magisterium of the church and the Pontifical Biblical Commission, the people who okay translations, who do you think brought to their attention that this verse doesn't really belong? What kind of professional people brought that to their attention?
Scholars.
Biblical scholars, exegetes, not theologians, not theologians. Biblical scholars and exegetes did that. Now, what I want you to think about is, I want you to ponder on this for a minute. You notice it's not the biblical scholars going to the Pope and the bishops of the church and saying, you all have all the answers. It's beamed down from the sky into your head. We don't have the answers. We just have opinions, mere opinions. You tell us, is our scholarship correct? No, on the contrary, humbly, the shepherding authority of the church, who okay Bible translations, okay, this is fine, this is not contrary to our faith, understand they have to avail themselves of the work of biblical exegetes, sound biblical exegesis. And when scholars come up with something, that informs the shepherding authority of the church. You see, this is just one example. I mean, I can bring up many others, but this is one example here. The magisterium itself has to be informed. They don't get information into their heads via magic. They have to avail themselves of scholarship too. Y'all see that? What do you think about that?
They recognize that it was added later.
They recognized, very good, that it was added later, and therefore they signed off on giving translations of Bibles approved, Vatican approval, with that verse put into the footnotes. Think about that.
If it was put in later, where's the proof that it maybe it's somebody's figment of the imagination? He put it in. It belongs there.
Okay, but we're talking about a specific thing, Joe. We're talking about a specific thing in this particular story. Let's not derail the topic. We're not talking about the validity of the whole story. We're talking about one specific verse. And the reason I'm bringing this up is to explain how the shepherding authority of the church listens to, doesn't just give directives, listens to and is informed by scholars. That's very important. Eric.
Was it that the verse was not present in Jerome's version?
In Jerome's version?
It never was there.
It just never was there. But in later Catholic Bibles it was.
Because at some point, someone believed that this needed further explanation.
And they glossed it in. Yes,
And
Stephanie.
further, going forward, there is something here that we're going to see and that's going to change because that more information is going to come to the fore and we're going to go, we're not going to want to hear it.
You mean we as in the church, the body of
In
Christ?
the church.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we will be a little more prepared for it, but it stands to reason.
That there will be other changes and things as we get better. That's a possibility. What exactly, I don't know, but that's... Hey, thanks for watching. Just continue the playlist for the next part of the study. If you have further questions, this is good. They will get addressed, so keep watching. If you found value, please subscribe, like, and share. As always, questions, comments, and criticisms are most welcome. God bless you.